Many thanks, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for coming along this evening. When Jim asked me to come and say something at the Yes Scottish Borders campaign, I didn't realise at the time that we would have a football World Cup and that we would probably be doing it towards the end of June. So it's really great that so many of you have at least decided to turn up this evening, given all the other things that are going on in the Borders and going on at present. Can I just say that tonight, whether you're a yes supporter, a no supporter, or somebody who is undecided, I hope that I say something that will inspire you or that you will at least find useful. It's really important, I think, to recognise that in speaking at these events, we have to make sure that we get the spirit and the tone of that right. And I'm not a yes supporter who supports yes but doesn't recognise or respect those who vote no. And I think it's absolutely critical that as the campaign and the debate goes on, that both sides of that debate ensure that there is respect for each other and that that is going right throughout the whole of the campaign. Now, 2014 is a very significant and important year for Scotland. We have the Commonwealth Games coming to Scotland. That, of course, came to the Borders last Saturday when Daley Thompson came over the bridge at Coldstream, the flags of the Commonwealth nations on the side of the bridge. That incredibly important image as the baton was carried into Scotland. The flame came back on Wednesday. It went throughout the Borders towns and was extremely well received. The eyes of the world will be on our nation as we prepare for the Commonwealth Games, a very significant event. We have a very significant year of homecoming in Scotland, where events will happen up and down the length and breadth of Scotland to celebrate Scotland and celebrate our rich cultural heritage, our tourism industry and all the things that Scotland has to offer. Again, the eyes of the world will be on us as that takes place. We have the Ryder Cup coming to Gleneagles, where Europe and America will do battle in one of the world's most important and prestigious sporting tournaments, a very significant event which will be watched by a global audience of billions. And of course, we also have the reason that we are here tonight, the debate that is taking place in Scotland around the independence referendum. The democratic opportunity for the people of Scotland to decide whether they wish to be an independent nation and have the powers that many nations around the world have, or whether they wish to remain part of the United Kingdom. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but I think with all of that going on, something of an historic nature is bound to happen in Scotland this year. Now, this referendum is being hard fought. Let's be absolutely clear about that. There is passions on the yes and on the no side. There are people who will fight with all the passion that they have. But let's not allow ourselves to believe that this referendum is not being conducted in any other way than in good spirit in the main and by people on both sides who are committed and respect each other. A great deal has been said about the cyber trolls, about those people who attack others. But the moderator of the Church of Scotland was right this week to suggest that those people should be ignored. This is a great debate that's taking place. It's a debate that's taking place in the correct and proper manner, with respect on all sides, and that's absolutely how it should be. When elected as council leader on the 3 occasions, I have used the same quote in my speech every time I've been elected, because we always welcome new members into the chamber, and I like to try and ensure that across the political spectrum, where we can have agreement and where we can work together for the good of the Borders, we do so. And it always reminds me of that quote by Voltaire, the one that is attributed to him, although I think if you read your history books, he allegedly didn't say it. But that's that quote that I disagree entirely with what you are saying, but I defend with my life your right to say it. And if both the yes and no side can keep that quote at the forefront of their mind, this will be a referendum that will move appropriately as it goes through the months and weeks ahead. I don't know if anyone was around on the weekend to watch Jim Phillips and Michael Forsyth at the Borders Book Festival. Those two great men came together in the Marquee in Melrose to discuss yes and no. Michael Forsyth, a right-wing conservative who will fight with every breath in his body to protect the Union. Jim, a left-wing socialist who will fight with every breath in his body to deliver an independent Scotland. For an hour in that tent, those two gentlemen knocked lumps out of each other in terms of the political debate. But they entered that tent as friends, and they left that tent as friends. And afterwards, when we were sitting in the aptly named Harmony House, having a drink, those two gentlemen were able to converse perfectly sensibly and in a way that was a benefit, certainly a thing, a testament to the campaign. I have to say it was a pretty unique day, because never did I think that in Melrose, a Melrose audience would ever give somebody a resounding round of applause when they declared that they wanted Scotland to be a socialist republic. So indeed, the debate that has been going on throughout our nation has been of great interest throughout. Now, before I get into the nitty-gritty of why I'm voting yes and why I would want to encourage you to vote yes, this is a bit of the evening where I can give you a commercial advert for something that's going on later, because as well as this event and other events I've been speaking at, actually before the referendum is conducted on the 18th of September, I will be doing something else. I have a good friend who I regularly go for a beer with. He is a no supporter, and that is Michael Moore MP. Michael Moore MP and I have known each other for a very long time. I am yes, he is no. In 2009, we walked the Borders 4 Abbeys Way, a 70-mile walk over 5 days. We raised £12,000 at that point for the special care baby unit of the Borders General Hospital. And we did that because our children had difficulties when they were born, and both had required care there. And at the end of that walk, a journalist said to us, "Will you do it again?" And we said, "Well, we'll not do it again in a hurry, but when we've recovered, we'll do it again." Well, we're doing it again this year in August. On the 25th of August until the 30th of August, we will spend 6 days walking 96 miles. And the 96 miles that we will walk is the 96 miles of the Tweed, from its source at Tweedsmuir to where it terminates in Berwick. We're going to do it over 6 days. You're all welcome to come and join us for the 6 days, or part of the day, or the whole day. And in the weeks and months ahead, there'll be opportunities for you to donate to that walk and to give us sponsorship. We're doing it this year for Radio Borders Cash for Kids, and also for the Tweed Valley Mountain Rescue Team, who do an absolutely tremendous job in the Scottish Borders. But we're also doing it so that each night we can have a debate about the referendum. And near the places where we stop on our walk, we will be having a debate where I will argue for the yes side and Michael will argue for the no side, but we'll do that in a light-hearted and friendly way. And the spirit of the walk that we will do is simply this: we're friends just now, and we'll be friends after the 19th of September, no matter what happens. But we're keen to make sure that in the Borders we at least have a credible and sensible debate. Now, turning to the issues of why I am voting yes, what are the key factors that have made me decide that a yes vote is the right thing to do? Well, the first one really is the whole way in which the campaign has been run from the no camp and from Better Together and the Westminster Government. And I want to talk about some of the scaremongering, some of the things that I think is simply wrong. The second reason I'm voting yes is because I'm worried about the state of our union and worried about democracy within the United Kingdom at this time, and I'll talk a little bit about that. The third reason I think we should all vote yes is the reflection that I have had on the huge success of the Scottish Parliament. Whatever your politics are, you cannot help but recognise that our 15-year-old Parliament has been tremendously successful in Edinburgh. It's done some truly awesome things for Scotland, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. And the other reason I'm voting yes, and the fourth reason, is because I simply believe in Scotland. I believe that as a nation, we are capable, we are able, and can perfectly well manage to run our own affairs and take Scotland forward. Now, in terms of Better Together, can I say that I'm not somebody who from day one was absolutely in the yes camp. I've always believed that devolution was the way to gain independence, and that independence would only come after a period of devolution, and then probably another period of devolution, and ultimately an independence goal could be achieved. And at the beginning of the campaign, I could have been persuaded that had the campaign come together, had Better Together genuinely offered more powers for the Scottish Parliament and had named those powers, had there been a talking up of Scotland and a discussion about our huge contribution to the Union, then actually I could have been persuaded to do something else. But I must admit, the early signs were not good. In July of last year, we saw in the Glasgow Herald Better Together describing themselves as Project Fear. They were going to make sure that Project Fear scared the pants off of every single person in Scotland so that they voted no. I don't think that's an appropriate way to take forward a campaign. They told us that investment in Scotland would start to diminish, that as we approach the referendum date, that foreign companies and other investors would turn their back on Scotland, worried about what may happen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we sit here tonight, if you look at the UK Treasury's own figures, Scotland tonight is second only to London again this quarter for foreign investment in our nation. Inward investment in Scotland is at an all-time high. It's the highest it's been since 1997. We're beating other parts of the UK hands down. So even though there is an independence referendum and no one knows the outcome, it's certainly not discouraging foreign investors and other investors to invest in our nation. Then we were told that the Royal Bank would leave. Vince Cable and Mark Carney have very clearly said the Royal Bank will be under great pressure. They will move their massive headquarters in Edinburgh straight after independence is declared, should it ever happen. There must be real worries there. Well, unfortunately, Vince didn't go and speak to the bank and its new chief executive, who, when asked about Scottish independence, said that the bank would adapt. The bank operates in countries all over the world, we tend to the Scottish yes vote, and not something that would necessarily be a showstopper. We're told that we can't join NATO. NATO is an alliance that we cannot join. We have to have weapons of nuclear mass destruction on the Clyde if we are to join NATO. Jim Murphy was very confident about this. He hasn't obviously looked at who's a member of NATO and the fact that 25 of the 28 nations who are a member of that alliance don't have nuclear weapons now, don't want nuclear weapons anytime soon. NATO themselves have been very careful to remain neutral and be quiet, and even yesterday signalled that this was not something that they were going to come into and be drawn on. There is no doubt, however, that NATO membership again is within Scotland's grasps. Then we get the funny ones, the ones that came out of nowhere. On the day that Europe announced that mobile phone charges would fall across the whole continent and that roaming charges in particular would be hammered to the floor, Better Together suggested that in an independent Scotland, mobile phone charges would increase. No one could quite understand that, and about half an hour after the press release was issued, it was withdrawn. We then, of course, have been told that the oil will run out. Constantly, we're being warned that we shouldn't rely on oil or worry too much about oil, that we're putting too much consideration into it. The oil is going to be an issue for us. Well, it is an issue for us, but we must remember that we have 24 billion barrels of it left. And that is not the estimates of the SNP government or the Treasury, it's the estimates of independent consultants and Sir Ian Wood, who carried out an independent report, who demonstrated clearly that there are 24 million barrels left to come. 40 million barrels extracted from the sea so far, 24 million left, and that's before we even consider the oil deposits that we know exist in the Clyde and exist elsewhere, which at the moment we don't tap into because of Trident on the Clyde and other issues. We've been told that there'll be passport controls on the border, that, straight after the 19th of September, all of a sudden there'll be a need to make sure that we have passport controls. And if you want to go from Eyemouth to Berwick to buy a loaf of bread in Morrison's, well, you'll need to take your passport with you. Well, I've been really interested in this one because, there is an agreement between the UK and Southern Ireland to allow free movement. Free movement areas are perfectly legitimate. Throughout Europe there is free movement. We'll be told that we have to sign up to Schengen, but there's no stipulation that says we have to sign up to Schengen. And it's absolutely nonsensical to suggest that border controls would be required if Scotland voted yes. But when it comes to the borders and the borderlands, there's another interesting thing. Because people who often criticise those who want to vote yes, and they say that they don't want to cooperate with our neighbours. They don't want us to cooperate with the rest of the UK. That's why you want us to vote yes and split away from what we know. Well, that's simply not true, and it's not borne out by the facts. In recent times, there has been an academic study published called Borderlands. Borderlands looks at the impact of devolution and how that's impacting on the north east and north west of England. It also looks at what may happen if there was a yes vote in an independence referendum. The academics behind it sent the report to the two governments, the Westminster government and the Scottish government, and they suggested that there should be a coming together of the councils on the borders, that Northumberland, Cumbria, Carlisle, Scottish Borders and Dumfries and Galloway should get together and work in a spirit of cooperation. The Westminster government put the report in a drawer, locked it away and left it to gather dust. The Scottish government, in contrast, decided to do something about it. Last year in Hawick, Alex Salmon came, he announced the government's support for the Borderlands initiative. He's provided some funding to assist with it. He's provided Scottish Government staff to ensure that it can be supported. And I was lucky earlier on this year to chair the first Borderlands Summit meeting at the Cadrona House Hotel in Peebles, where we brought the 5 councils together to begin the preparation of an action plan. We agreed that no matter what happens on the 18th and 19th of September, there is undoubtedly things that we should cooperate on come what may in the referendum. And in November we will come back together, this time in Northumberland, to sign a new agreement that will start to see us taking forward a range of partnerships initiatives in relation to tourism and other matters, and where we will work together with our colleagues north of the border. So it's absolute south of the border. So it's absolute nonsense to suggest that we don't wish to cooperate. Then we get to the really funny ones, the ones that, you know, have always been very interesting. We're going to have no entry to the Commonwealth. If we become an independent country, we're not guaranteed entry to the Commonwealth. 15 minutes after Better Together said that, a journalist pointed out that the Commonwealth is largely made up of nations who have gained their independence from the UK in recent times and in past history. So that was a 15-minute wonder. Then, of course, in April, the Scotsman gave us the incredible news that actually we should worry a lot, because actually if we vote yes, we're not guaranteed automatic entry to the Eurovision Song Contest. I like the Eurovision Song Contest, but you know, that was a hard one to believe. You know, you can give us the bedroom tax, you can inflict the poll tax on us, you can take our jobs, but oh, if you attack our Eurovision Song Contest entry, we'll all vote no. I don't think so. The Treasury, though, have never learned, and they've never learned, neither have Better Together, from all of these nonsensical ones. And recently, they made a fatal mistake. And that fatal mistake was an issue that in Scotland has had much coverage, and not quite the coverage it should have had. Because the Treasury recently published a document, and that document was about the set-up costs of an independent Scotland. Danny Alexander published this, and he was keen to ensure that so that the Yes campaign didn't attack him, they would make sure that they would use independent advice when putting together that Treasury report. Now, that Treasury report was put together using the data of Patrick Dunleavy. Patrick Dunleavy is an eminent LSE economist. He's a professor, and he's a man who's done a huge amount of work on the set-up costs of independent nations. So the Treasury based its whole document on Patrick's work, and they trumpeted in the morning press call that it would be coming out, and Professor Dunleavy's arguments would show that Alex Salmond needed to find £2.5 billion and that this was going to be a game changer. It's a real shame that 10 minutes before the final press announcement came and that the report was published, that Professor Dunleavy tweeted the world to say that the Treasury had misinterpreted his information, had used it the wrong way, had 10 times overestimated the true cost to Scotland, that he believed actually the Scottish Government could do what they needed to do significantly greater, for a significantly less cost than what the Treasury were saying, and he distanced himself and disowned the Treasury's document. So when there's arguments about the set-up costs in Scotland, as there were in the Scottish Parliament this week, we should be very, very wary of what we're hearing coming out of the Treasury. But the worst one of all, and the thing that I think has upset me probably the most, was in February, when the debate took place between Nicola Sturgeon and Joanne Lamont. You may have seen that debate. That's one. I'm going to read you this quote, because I still am amazed that this quote was ever given. And you don't need to believe me on this. Go on to YouTube, you'll find this quote. But Joanne Lamont, when talking about Yes for Scotland and what Scotland could become, made the quote, "We're not genetically programmed in Scotland to make political decisions." Ladies and gentlemen, we're all thick and we can't do it ourselves, is what Joanne Lamont is telling you. That's an absolutely inappropriate quote. It was the wrong thing to say at the time. Labour have done a great deal to try and distance themselves from it, and well they should. It should never have been made. And I hope that you would agree with me that Joanne Lamont should never be the First Minister of our nation. I could go on about all the Better Together issues and the things that have been so difficult and the negative campaigning, but I want to move on because actually time is of the essence and there are just so many bad examples of the negativity that there are too many to mention. The next issue that has caused me to think very carefully about where we are going is the state of our current union. Once again, we have a Conservative government in Westminster that Scotland did not vote for nor did not want. There are more giant pandas in Edinburgh Zoo, as it is often said, than there are Scottish Conservative MPs. And there is a real democratic deficit in Scotland because of that government. And I don't believe that in a modern democracy that can go on. And we need to worry about that, because actually this is a government that have done things that have hurt Scotland. We've seen the bedroom tax implemented, an abhorrent piece of legislation designed to target and hurt the most vulnerable in our society, and with some completely inane and bizarre rules. Now, thankfully, because of the Scottish Parliament and the cross-party working and the work that local councils have done, the bedroom tax is almost null and void in Scotland now. We found the money basically to not have it. but it's still in the statute books, and what should happen is it should be removed for all time. We've seen austerity measures introduced that mean that hospitals and schools aren't being developed, and that big changes are being made to how local authorities are funded down south that cannot be helping our nation. Now, I'm not kidding you for 1 second that the government in 2010 didn't need to do something around welfare reform and austerity. But they've gone too far and they've gone too fast, and they've caused real pain. And it will come back to haunt us for a very long time to come. There's no question about that. And at this point, I suppose, I have to say that, unlike some people, I don't feel too bad, actually, about the Liberal Democrats, because often the Liberal Democrats are very heavily criticised. And one of their mantras is that if it wasn't for them, things could have been a whole lot worse. Well, actually, I think that's true. I think that we had a majority Conservative government, things could have been a whole lot worse for Scotland and the UK. And actually, on a number of issues, there has at least been some kind of counterbalance. The whole English dimension in Europe concerns me. We're now seeing, in England in particular, a real drive to move away from the European Union. The rise of UKIP and the rise of the Conservative right, making sure there will be an in-out referendum in 2017 challenging our membership of the European Union. Can I tell you, lots of people will tell you that the biggest threat to our democracy at the moment is the referendum we're having on the 18th of September. Don't kid yourself on it. Don't believe that for 1 second. The biggest threat to our democracy and our economy is an in-out referendum in Europe in 2017. Because Europe is worth a huge amount to the UK and to Scotland, and we leave it at our peril. And I worry that that is the direction of travel that we are heading in. At least one thing I know is a yes vote would secure our future in Europe, and it would secure it for a very long time to come. We've also seen changes to the NHS down south, which you would not recognise if you looked at them in terms of a Scottish context. We've seen the development of free schools, where if you've got money, anyone can create a school. Tomorrow, if I had the money, I could go to Newcastle and set up the free school for people who might want to vote yes, and that would be absolutely fine. How can that be sensible for our education system? And down south as well, we've seen huge changes to local government funding, which mean that for the first time ever, deprivation is no longer recognised. In Scotland at the moment, each council gets funding based on the needs of their area. In England, need is no longer important, and huge amounts of council spending has been changed. So places like Liverpool, where there is huge deprivation and unemployment, suffer with no money, while leafy suburbs in other parts of the country receive significant amounts of money and can now offer new services, whilst other councils are making cuts. Now, you maybe are wondering, why am I talking about those issues here? Why should they concern us? Well, they should concern us because in 2015 we're going to have a general election, and that general election, of course, will see a new Westminster government elected. And unlike some people, I worry about who that government will be. I think the Conservatives will at least be the largest party. They may have the ability to have a coalition with UKIP or with the Ulster Unionists, or they may even just manage to win a small majority. And I think if they did that, some of the changes that we've seen down there, some of the things that Scotland have been protected from, may creep this very way, and we should be concerned about that. We also know that in 2016, the next round of the austerity spending cuts, some £25 billion of spending cuts will be coming our way, and Scotland will face about £2.5 to £4 billion of cuts in the Scottish bloc, something that we should absolutely guard against. And let's not think that Labour can come to the rescue. Unfortunately, I think Ed Miliband and Ed Balls are probably unelectable. It's quite possible that they will have a worse election than Gordon Brown. I don't think we'll see a Labour government anytime soon. And I worry what will happen to our nation if we see a Conservative government, and just exactly where that will take us as we move forward. We are also a country that is very different. As a country, we have a different attitude to taxation. We have a different attitude to social policy. We have a different attitude to the health service and to education. We want to be thrifty and frugal with money, but we also want to make sure that we spend wisely on our public services. And I want to just give you an example to illustrate just how different we are in Scotland from the rest of the UK. And it's a Conservative example. The Convention of Scottish Local Authorities since 2010 has campaigned against welfare cuts. Almost all the welfare cuts have happened. We felt that they were happening too quickly, and we felt that they were being implemented in a way that was not sustainable. And we've called upon councils and council leaders across Scotland to vote with us every time to try and oppose these. And every single time there's been a unanimous vote. Now, you might find that strange, but it is an important issue, because the simple fact of the matter is Scotland's local authorities, including Conservative councillors and Conservative leaders, have consistently and unanimously since 2010 voted against what's going on. Conservatives in Scotland vote against their own government in Westminster. That is how they are concerned about what's taking place in relation to welfare reform. So we're a different nation with very different standards. And finally, I have to say that in this part of the speech, the failure for David Cameron to come to Scotland during this referendum campaign and have a debate with our First Minister is simply inexcusable, and even Gordon Brown agrees. Can you imagine a Prime Minister who's prioritised the Union, who said that his most important job is to protect the UK and do everything he can to try and salvage it, but he won't come to Scotland to debate the future of the Union and why we're better together with Alex Salmond because he's not a Scottish MP? What a load of nonsense. Absolutely terrible that that debate is not taking place. And I wonder if Cameron will rethink, but certainly for there to be no debate on that issue in Scotland at this time is quite incredible. Now, my third reason for voting yes is about our Scottish Parliament and the incredible success that our Parliament has been. It's 15 years old. I was very fortunate to be allowed to take part and lead the Yes Yes campaign in the Scottish Borders at the time of devolution. And we campaigned in a cross-party way, all the parties who were committed to devolution, to deliver our Parliament. At that time, you may remember that many of the same things are being thrown at us today. Many of the same things that are being said as to why you should not vote yes were said then. Those things were said about devolution. A number of businesses suggested they may move. Standard Life raised its concerns again. The Bra lady, Michelle Mon, said that she might have to go down south. All these concerns were raised constantly. It was a difficult campaign. The Conservatives argued very strongly against it. There was a real battle. But we secured devolution, and we secured devolution with overwhelming support of the Scottish nation. And in doing so, we've done something very special. Over the 15 years, our Parliament has achieved a great deal. And I want to, and I make no apology for reading these to you, but I want to just go through some of the Parliament's good achievements. And I've limited it to 15, as it's 15 years old. I could have had about 36 on here. But we've got free personal care in Scotland, which means that our elderly people can be looked after in dignity in their homes or get cared for and the protection that they need. We've seen the scrapping of tuition fees, which mean our young people aren't saddled with unsustainable debt when they leave university and college. We've had a Homelessness Act, which has meant a minimum standard of housing for people in the social rented sector and an absolute guarantee that anyone who wants a home will get a home. We've seen mental health changes to prioritise mental health spending for the first time in our health service. We have a huge number and a record number of police officers on the beat and the lowest crime we've had in 30 years. We've had the introduction of the smoking ban to improve Scotland's health and to do something very vital. Smoking in Scotland over the last 10 years has been transformed. The number of people doing it has absolutely dwindled. A great piece of legislation with a huge health benefit. We've seen equal marriage, which means that people who wish to have same-sex marriage get equal status. A perfectly legitimate and sensible thing to do in a modern Scottish society. We've seen the minimum pricing on alcohol introduced, which means that for the first time a government is seeking to try and tackle Scotland's addiction with alcohol. And for the first year, the statistics tell us that alcohol consumption has actually fallen. We've seen the Land Reform Act, which means that all of us are able to walk around Scotland's hills and countryside unimpeded, and that actually landlords can't just do what they want. We've got right to buy legislation in place, which means that communities can buy land and buy buildings that are important to them to do things with. We've seen a children's bill recently going through the Parliament, giving greater number of nursery places and more nursery hours than ever before, and delivering something very, very significant for childcare. We've seen an Adults with Incapacity Act approved to protect our most vulnerable adults and to make sure that they have proper legal protection for the first time in our country's history. We've got free eye checks, free dental checks, free prescriptions, free concessionary travel for our elderly citizens, and for each year, for the last 7 years, there's been a freeze in the council tax. The Scottish Parliament, the Scottish Government and local authorities working together at the time of the greatest recession we have faced to make sure that we do something to help the finances of every family in Scotland by freezing that tax. Ladies and gentlemen, the Parliament has done an amazing number of things. Just imagine what it could do if it had more power, if it controlled spending, if it controlled all the issues around taxation, if it controlled welfare, if it controlled defence and foreign affairs. What more could our Parliament do for our nation? And in the Scottish borders, there's been a significant amount achieved since the Scottish Parliament's inception. We've managed to achieve 3 new high schools, state-of-the-art high schools, in Berwickshire, in Duns, Eyemouth and in Earlston, with fantastic facilities. We've got a network of 2 and 3G full-size sports pitches being built with Scottish Government money, working in partnership with them, in Peebles, in Galashiels, in Selkirk, in Hoyt, in Jedburgh, in Kelso, in Duns and in Eyemouth. Incredible.
Stop a minute. You're not getting 3G in Selkirk, it's 2. You're actually wrong there.
I said Worston, I said a network of 2 and 3G pitches. I said a network of 2 and 3G pitches. So
notice you recognised these right away.
Then we have Abbotsford House, the tremendous house, the former home of Sir Walter Scott. £12.8 million investment, significantly unlocked by the help of the Scottish Government. We've then got the Borders College, joint campus with Heriot University, a £50 million investment in the Scottish borders, a huge project that's delivering and will deliver in Galashiels. In Selkirk this week, we will kick off the £30 million flood defence scheme, again funded and made possible because of our Scottish Parliament. And then lastly, but most importantly, the Borders Railway. The £350 million development of that fantastic line, 1,000 staff working on it at the moment. The biggest transport infrastructure project in Scotland for many years. The biggest rail project in Scotland since 1941. The biggest rail project in the UK since the development of the Channel Tunnel link. A very significant project that would never have happened without devolution, without our Scottish Parliament, and we should be very thankful for it. And I believe, colleagues, there's more to come. When the Cabinet come to Selkirk this week, you may know that they're coming, and you'll be able to meet Alec in person, the rest of the Cabinet, and the Victoria Hall in Selkirk between 12 o'clock and 2. There will be a question and answer session on the Government's White Paper and on other issues, and you'll have a chance to come and meet the Cabinet. But when the Cabinet come, I'll present them with the latest shopping list of projects and things that they can fund for the Scottish borders. And believe you me, we're working on a number of other things, such as reopening the railway station at Reston and delivering other projects across our region that will benefit us. There can be absolutely no doubt that a Scottish Parliament with full powers, with more powers to its elbow, could deliver so much more. If a devolved Parliament can achieve all of that, just think what a yes vote can do. And then, finally, colleagues, I come to the most important point, and that's the point where the reason I'm voting yes is because I simply believe in Scotland. I believe we're a resourceful, talented nation who are capable of managing and delivering our own affairs without too much difficulty. I was fortunate on Monday to go to the Scottish Edge Awards at the Royal Bank of Scotland in Edinburgh. These are awards that take place twice a year. They are co-hosted by the Scottish Government and by the Royal Bank of Scotland. They bring together 30 of the best young businesses that are out there in Scotland today. So 60 businesses are awarded funding and go to these awards each year, 2 sets of awards. These were inspiring. I sat there for all day listening to pitches of about 15 minutes long. The 30 businesses we saw were operating in every single sector of the Scottish economy. In life sciences, in the financial sector, in manufacturing, in tourism. It was a tremendous day. £668,000 was given out. Those businesses building things that for tomorrow will become significant and will deliver for Scotland, the UK and the world. Really incredible young entrepreneurs. Now these people are doing that in Scotland today. They're doing it before this referendum and they'll be doing it after it. And we need to recognise that we have many talented people and many wonderful businesses doing tremendous things for Scotland. And we should celebrate that. We know that the Financial Times tells us that Scotland will be a wealthy nation, will be one of the top 20 economies in the globe, that actually we are capable of being able to deliver our own right. Standard & Poor's, the ratings agency, has said that we will gain their best and top rating, and they're suggesting that they see no difficulties to an independent Scotland, and a Scotland that could thrive under independence. We know we have a great business sector. We're a global leader at the moment in the energy market, not just our oil, but our offshore and our renewables industry is becoming the envy of many countries around the world. Our life sciences sector is booming and doing some tremendous work. And inward investment, as I said earlier on, is at record levels, second only to London for inward investment in Scotland at this time. And all of that is before we talk about the 24 billion barrels of oil that still remain at our disposal in Scotland. Now, people don't like to talk about oil. They often want to criticise anyone who votes yes or talks about oil. But let me tell you, oil is important, because Norway, of course, used its oil in a sensible way. It set up its oil fund. The Norwegian oil fund worth £736 billion today. It's the largest investment fund in the world. It's bigger than any company's investment fund many times over. It owns stock in almost every single big company in the world. It's a very significant thing. The last Norwegian election was fought on the basis of not should we spend the oil fund, it was fought on the basis of should we spend the profit from the oil fund, and how much of that profit should we spend? Well, both sides agreed that quite a large proportion of the profit should get reinvested in the oil fund so it could get even bigger. But how much could we spend to make sure the lives of everybody in Norway was so much better? Now, I don't think for one second that we will ever be able to replicate the oil fund in Norway. Unfortunately, if we wanted to do that, we should have done that in the 1970s. But I do think with the 24 billion barrels that we have left, we can do something and go some way to creating an oil fund in Scotland that can be used to diversify our economy and that can be used to build a sustainable and significant Scottish economy for many years to come. And we absolutely should vote yes to seize that challenge. And we should also, at the same time we're about it, start to think about how we explore the oil reserves that we know exist in the Clyde in the west of Scotland. And to do that, we need to end the absolute disgrace of nuclear weapons on our soil. And if nothing else, voting yes will certainly do everything possible to ensure that that can be done. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe in Scotland. I think Scotland is a capable nation. Our talented workforce, the people that we have around us, our creative industries, everything about Scotland is fantastic. We see that our Parliament has made a huge difference to our nation in the 15 years since devolution. And we know that a great many Scots do things globally. If you look back through history, and I won't go through that, but if you look back through history, the Industrial Revolution, and to many inventions that have shaped the world, it's been Scottish people and Scottish inventors, Scottish ingenuity, Scottish talent that has led the way. That talent's been there for decades, centuries. It's there today, and it will be there tomorrow, and it will be there after we vote yes on the 18th of September. We can be an independent country, and we should be. Ladies and gentlemen, on the 18th of September, I hope you cast your votes and I hope that you vote yes. And on the 19th of September, in count centres up and down the land, when the yes representative gets up onto the podium to accept that that area has voted yes, let's hope that the words we hear ringing out across the whole of Scotland are the immortal words of that great nationalist, Winnie Ewing, when she said after the Hamilton by-election, "Stop the world, Scotland wants to get on." Thank you.